Welcome back. What was supposed to be a once a month update is going to be once every quarter, apparently. I'll keep trying to improve that, but in the meantime, here we are at the present end of track. This is just about into the town of Dayton. So as typical, I've been working, just not doing a good job following my progress by video. So here we have an unprototypical helper. It's an SD40-2, which wasn't built for 3 years. This particular road number wasn't built for 3 years after I'm modeling, but for the time being, I think it's going to be the helper on the Dayton Grade. So rather than following east as we've been with progress, we're going to start at the end of track and follow this helper west for at least a portion of the run back to Echo. You can see a little bit of foam scenery, primarily working on that to make sure I don't have any tragic issues with derailments on spline where there's no scenery underneath it. Cross the lift out. Again, this won't need to be pulled out during an operating session. This is just a Bilco door to the garage, so it's a utility access. Take the siding and Echo, as there's a westbound sitting on the main. There's also a train on the Rural Valley branch, although that branch is going to be all coal, so the fact that there's a mixed freight isn't accurate. I was just moving some trains around to test everything out. Best I can tell is that Chessie typically ran 2 4-axle pushers up the Dayton Grade. There are very, very few or rare sightings of 6-axle units other than the SD9s that were stationed in Riker, but like I said, for the time being, this will be potentially the pusher, but we'll see. SD40s existed at this point in time. There weren't a lot of SD40-2s, but even so, I think all of the 6-axle modern power was probably assigned to sand patch or other more significant routes. And since it appears to me that all of the rural valley trains were served out of Riker, this end of the Y really wasn't utilized since no trains moved in that direction at this point in time. So for the benefits of compression, I'm going to use this not connected leg of the Y as the helper pocket. Not that we would ever need it, but if I did decide to use 2 4-axles or a powered and a dummy or something like that, there's certainly enough room on here to store more than just one locomotive. Certainly cars could get stored there as well if needed. And then the actual leg of the Y that is connected and will run all the way to the rural valley branch in the other room is now connected, although the siding is not yet in. That'll get hand laid in code 70. Here's that mixed freight local I was explaining before. So that is where we are into Echo. And now maybe we'll follow a train eastbound that will run from Butler, or possibly even staging. We'll run that here into Echo, into the siding, maybe to simulate what the pusher's next shove will be. Coming into East Butler here, you can see the byproduct of what I've been working on, in addition to extending track all the way up to Dayton, which we just saw with the pusher returning back to Echo. I started doing base foam scenery, particularly in the areas where there's spline, obviously to mitigate risk of a derailment finding its way to the floor. So unfortunately, I think we're at the point now where the railroad gets much worse looking before it gets better. that signal's green because I don't think this train has a single car with resistor wheel sets on it. So obviously that'll get fixed as I add more cars. This area is coming into the Fennelton area, which will be cut. So there'll be a section of cut in between the backdrop in the foreground here. And then transitions to fill where we come over top of the northern branch. Again, entering the high-risk zone where there's no base scenery to catch something should it fall. Train's coming off of a slight grade. Had a friend of mine print out a large-scale map of the railroad. So with the completion of end of track right now is about right here. So we're about 16 feet away from moving into the next room. So despite my lack of filming, progress is being completed. Coming into the Mosgrove block, we've got a yellow light on the ABS signal because of that train we saw sitting on the main in Echo. And we'll have a red signal coming into Echo. Still, these are test signals. I'm waiting for my proper CPLs to get manufactured. I'll have to stop here. Get all of our turnouts lined up for the siding. I think I've mentioned before, the siding here at Echo will hold full-length trains on both the siding and the main, so this is a critical spot for the dispatcher to pass trains. Also a likely spot where he's going to need to do that because like the train that we're following into the siding right now would definitely need a pusher set on the back, so this gives them a spot to be able to do that. Typically this train should probably have 3 on the head end. Again, I think I've mentioned the prototype typically had 5 4-axle units on a standard train from this point east. So 5 on the front and 2 helpers on the back going up the Dayton Grade. And it's facts like that that make you contemplate why CSX divested this line to Genesee and Wyoming in the late 80s or early 90s. So here we are tucked into the siding, and theoretically our helper would come out of the helper pocket and be able to tack on. Whether or not the dispatcher would want to get this westbound out of the way or not is a different story. So that is the progress so far. We've gotten all the way up the Dayton Grade. Ended up doing this at 3.125%, so 3 1/8. Just playing around a little bit with that to see what kind of train lengths I'd get with the number of locomotives. I think with 3 locomotives they probably won't need helpers on the back end, so I'll have to toy around with whether or not I want to do have 2 units coming out of the staging yard, one being powered and one a dummy, and then maybe at WS Tower they pick up a second powered unit, so it appears like 3 powered units on the front. Interestingly enough, if you place a 24-car train on the entire grade and have 2 locomotives on it, if you remove one of the locomotives or uncouple it, the 24-car train will drag the 4-axle locomotive slowly down the rails. So definitely need 3 probably to really be able to take the grade easily, but again, I don't think you'll need a helper unit for actually climbing the grade. So here's an area where the looking at USGS topographic maps, again, very much compressed, but there was definitely some spots where the railroad right-of-way followed a creek. So I'm going to try and do that here, where they just kind of shelved the right-of-way into a hillside. So I'm thinking that from the backside of this track, we're going to come all the way up to, you know, almost the window here, with a hillside, and kind of wrap that around, so it looks like you've got just a really tall, massive not fill, but hillside rather, and then the right-of-way notched in, and probably very little fill on the downhill side, but a pretty strong notch into the hillside where it paralleled the creek here. So the lift-out bridge seems to work pretty well, so I'm satisfied that I deliberately made it heavy, and it's probably going to be hard to do with one hand. This is not my design. I got this from Bob Charles, who I'm not sure where he got it, if it was his development or if he got it from another modeler, but cut a triangle out of another, all of one piece of wood, and then put in brass plates, 1 for each rail, and did that on both sides. So there's no plugs necessary. You just drop this thing in place, and it picks up the electrical continuity. I will have to run a cable with a plug for the signals. And again, I'm not too worried about having to have a fail-safe system here, because this door goes to the Bilco door out to the driveway, which is locked from the outside and locked down here. And while there's operating going on, there's no need for anyone to remove this, so it really shouldn't be. Whether I put a pin in it or something just so no one, for whatever reason, pulls it out,
But it's not like a lift out that has to go up and down several times during an operating session, so I'm not too worried about having to cut the power. So yeah, we're coming along. I don't really want to do scenery at this point, but I did decide I wanted to do enough of the foam base to protect the trains from peril should there be a derailment. So obviously have a bunch to do on the other side of the peninsula here, but that's the progress update for now. I did add some more temporary signals and have all the hardware in. You can see all the way down there. Have the decoder, or not decoders, the PSX power shields and the Arduino for that pair of signals, although the signals aren't there yet. Everything's set up for it. So trying to do a lot of the legwork as I go, but once I get some of this base foam scenery in to protect the trains, our next project will be to do the town of Dayton, which, like I said, is the last 16 feet before we leave the first room. So we're getting closer to the second room, and I'll have to do something with my workbench, which is temporarily set there. I think it'll tuck underneath, but we'll see. So more to follow, and my goal is still going to be once a month, but clearly that's been more like a quarterly endeavor. So I'll see if I can't improve. Thanks for watching.